The geopolitical balancing act that defines Russia's position in South Asia is not just about defending its own territory or keeping rivals at bay. It's about shaping the broader strategic architecture of the region in a way that ensures no single power, particularly the United States, can dictate the rules. For decades, South Asia has been a pivotal arena where the ambitions of great powers collide. The region is not just a cluster of countries. It's a crossroads linking the Middle East, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Indo-Pacific. Whoever holds significant influence here can shape trade flows, military logistics, and political alliances across half the globe. Russia understands this deeply, and for Moscow, allowing the United States to dominate this theater would undermine its ability to act as an independent power broker in world affairs. Russia's interest in maintaining influence in South Asia is rooted in hard geopolitics. The United States has consistently sought to expand its military presence and political clout in the region, often using security partnerships, economic incentives, and soft power campaigns as tools. Washington frames this as promoting democracy, stability, and free markets. But from the Russian perspective, it's about extending U.S. hegemony and encircling its strategic partner. Moscow sees this pattern not as benign cooperation, but as part of a larger playbook the U.S. has applied in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and the Pacific. Move in, build influence, shift political alignments, and slowly turn countries into nodes of an American-led network. If the United States were to dominate South Asia, Russia's influence would be eroded in multiple ways. It would face reduced leverage in global diplomacy because Washington could use its position in the region to pressure Russia's allies and limit Moscow's access to vital trade and energy routes. The U.S. Navy's presence in the Indian Ocean could threaten Russia's maritime ambitions, especially its plans for connecting the Arctic, Central Asia, and South Asia through a network of ports and pipelines. Furthermore, U.S.-led defense alliances in the region could isolate Russia from its traditional arms markets, undermining one of its most lucrative and strategically significant industries. To counter this, Russia employs a balancing strategy rather than an outright confrontation. It strengthens its bilateral ties with key South Asian states through energy cooperation, arms deals, technology transfers, and infrastructure investment. These relationships serve a dual purpose. They provide economic benefits to Russia, and they anchor Moscow's role as a critical alternative to the US. For example, Russia's defense cooperation with India is not simply about selling fighter jets or submarines. It's about embedding a long-term dependency on Russian technology and training that gives Moscow a stake in India's security calculus. This interdependence acts as a buffer against American efforts to fully align India with its own strategic agenda. And Russia also positions itself as a mediator and stabilizer in regional disputes, a role that bolsters its credibility and influence. The US tends to favor certain allies over others, which can create tensions and polarization. Moscow, on the other hand, often presents itself as more flexible, willing to engage with rival states simultaneously, such as maintaining strong ties with both India and Pakistan in different spheres. This is a deliberate contrast to the US model, and it appeals to states in South Asia that value strategic autonomy. Economic influence is another pillar of Russia's balancing act. South Asia's demand for energy is massive and growing, and Russia, as a major energy exporter, leverages these to maintain relevance. Oil, gas, and coal exports, along with nuclear power projects, give Russia an entry point into the economic lifelines of the region. When countries rely on Russia for critical energy supplies, it becomes harder for the US to push them into policies that run counter to Moscow's interests. This is further reinforced by Russia's participation in multilateral frameworks like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which offer South Asian countries an alternative platform for economic and security cooperation outside the orbit of Western-led institutions. Beyond tangible assets, there's also a narrative battle. The United States projects itself as the champion of liberal democracy, but Russia counters this with an appeal to sovereignty, non-interference, and multipolarity. In South Asia, where many countries have a history of colonial exploitation, this message resonates. Moscow's stance suggests that no single power, especially one with a track record of regime change operations, should be allowed to dominate the region's future. This ideological framing reinforces the practical steps Russia takes on the ground, creating a layered approach to limiting US influence. Would you like me to now break down the second keynote in the same detailed manner? That would make the upcoming speech far more precise. Russia's historical and strategic partnerships in South Asia are the backbone of its resistance to US dominance in the region. And these connections run far deeper than transactional diplomacy. They are rooted in decades of mutual reliance, shared strategic interests, and a web of military, economic, and political ties that have been carefully cultivated since the Cold War era. One of the most significant elements of this legacy is the enduring partnership between Russia and India, which has survived ideological shifts, economic upheavals, and changes in the global balance of power. This relationship is not merely symbolic. It is a tangible strategic asset that Russia is unwilling to see undermined by American influence. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union and India built a robust alliance that went beyond the rhetoric of friendship. Moscow was New Delhi's most reliable defense partner, supplying advanced weaponry, providing training for Indian military personnel, and even offering diplomatic cover in moments of crisis. In return, India offered Moscow a foothold in a region where the United States was actively backing Pakistan and seeking to limit Soviet reach. This foundation has persisted into the modern Russian Federation, with defense trade remaining a cornerstone of the relationship. Today, more than half of India's military equipment is of Russian origin, ranging from fighter aircraft and tanks to submarines and missile systems. This dependence is not incidental. It creates a long-term structural bond that makes it difficult for India to completely pivot towards US military hardware without incurring high costs and operational risks. Beyond India, Russia has also cultivated relationships with other South Asia states, though to varying degrees. With Pakistan, for example, Moscow has historically had a cool relationship due to Islamabad's close ties with Washington during the Cold War and its role in supporting the Afghan Mujahideen against Soviet forces. However, in recent years, Russia has cautiously expanded military and energy exercises and energy discussions. While these ties are not as deep as those with India, they serve as a signal that Russia can diversify its partnerships in South Asia and engage even with states that have historically been in the US sphere of influence. This flexibility enhances Moscow's ability to counterbalance American diplomacy in the region by preventing the US from consolidating a unified bloc against Russian interests. Energy and infrastructure projects further cement these partnerships. Russia's involvement in building nuclear power plants in India, such as the Kudankulam nuclear power plant, is a prime example of how Moscow embeds itself into the long-term developmental frameworks of South Asian nations. These projects are not only economically significant, but also strategically binding, as they require years of cooperation, technology sharing, and political coordination. Similarly, oil and gas deals, as well as proposed pipeline routes connecting Russia to South Asian markets via Central Asia, create physical and economic interdependencies that cannot be easily dismantled by a change in government or foreign policy. Diplomatically, Russia leveraged these historical ties to position itself as a credible alternative to the United States, whereas Washington often attaches political conditions to its partnerships, emphasizing democratic reforms, human rights, or alignment with its broader foreign policy goals, Moscow tends to approach these relationships with fewer or first demands, focusing instead on mutual respect for sovereignty and non-interference in domestic affairs. This approach resonates strongly with South Asian governments that are wary of external pressure, especially given their histories of colonialism and foreign intervention. It allows Russia to frame itself as a dependable partner that prioritizes stability and autonomy over ideological alignment. Multilateral platforms amplify the impact of these partnerships. Russia's role in organizations like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization brings South Asian nations into forums where the US is absent, reducing Washington's ability to shape the agenda. For India, BRICS offers an arena to coordinate with other emerging powers, while for smaller South Asian states, SCO engagement opens up security and economic cooperation avenues beyond Western-led institutions. Russia's active participation in these groups not only strengthens bilateral ties, but also situates them within a broader multipolar framework that challenges US-centric international structures. Another dimension of these partnerships is the culture and educational exchange built up over decades. Generations of South Asian scientists, engineers, and diplomats have studied in Soviet and Russian institutions, creating personal networks that still influence bilateral relations today. Russian language centers, cultural events, and media outreach in South Asia contribute to a level of familiarity and soft power that the United States cannot easily replicate. These cultural linkages reinforce political and economic connections, making the overall relationship more resilient to external pressure. The security aspect of these partnerships extends beyond hardware and into strategic coordination. Russia and India, for instance, conduct regular joint military exercises, share intelligence on regional threats, and coordinate positions on issues like terrorism, maritime security, and the future of Afghanistan. Even where their interests do not perfectly align, the habit of consultation and coordination gives Russia a seat at the table in shaping South Asian security dynamics. For Moscow, this is critical in preventing the United States from monopolizing influence over regional defense arrangements or establishing military bases that could project power towards Russian borders and interests. These historical and strategic partnerships give Russia both a defensive shield and an offensive tool in its geopolitical competition with the United States. They allow Moscow to resist American efforts to realign South Asia towards US-led security architectures, and they provide a platform for Russia to promote its vision of a multipolar world order. By maintaining deep-rooted ties in the region, especially with a major power like India, Russia ensures that US dominance remains incomplete and contested. This interplay of defense, energy, diplomacy, and culture forms a dense web of connections that would take decades for Washington to match, let alone surpass. Even as South Asian countries diversify their foreign relations, the legacy of Russian partnerships continues to anchor Moscow's relevance in the region.